An excerpt from Fire Goddess. Clash. The dance music from inside the pub vibrated the door handle as he paused, debating whether or not he should step inside. He inhaled and opened the heavy wooden door. He spied her seated at the bar drinking shots of Fireball, chatting with a small group of friends. He walked over, breathing deeply, bracing himself. A bead of sweat trickled down his brow, and his hands became moist. Once within arm's reach, he tapped her gently on the right shoulder. "Hi." She glanced up. So, without hesitation, she swung her right fist square into his jaw. His eyeglasses flew to the ground, and his split lip started to bleed. He raised his hand to his mouth, rubbing the fresh cut, and his eyes attempted to refocus. "You're still mad, huh?" She prepped her left fist for the next strike and glared at him. Her brunette hair began to turn into auburn flames at the tips. "Mad?" She grabbed him by the neck, and despite her shorter stature, she lifted him up and slammed his body into the nearest wall with a force hard enough to dent it. "Try furious!" The hand gripping his neck began to heat up, and he could feel the burn marks imprinting upon his skin. "Outside!" The barkeeper growled at them while holding a club. She looked over to the barkeeper and nodded, releasing her grip. He slumped against the wall, rubbing his neck, and waved an acknowledgement to the barkeeper as well, and they both proceeded to the side door of the pub. As they exited the pub into the beer garden, they walked towards an uncrowded area. A long sword began to materialize from her right hand. He noticed the glint of the blade and reached for his weapon. They walked over to a darkened corner of the beer garden, and her blade started to spark as she grazed it along the concrete. He swallowed hard, bracing himself. Fighting her when she was angry was a dangerous risk. Out of range of being seen or heard by the other patrons, she turned towards him, and immediately her sword swung directly at his neck. Anticipating her fury, he had raised his own sword defensively up towards, blocking the swift blow. "I can explain." "I don't care." Her ice blue eyes flared with hot flames. Her second blow swung from the left towards his thighs, and the third from the right towards his torso, with another blow following and attempting to strike his neck again. He defended each blow. He carefully watched to see if her fighting pattern had changed up at all. They had fought side by side for millennia, and she had a certain strategy for specific types of opponents. But her fury could make her more impulsive. In a mortal body, one blow could prove deadly. Exchanging blows, he took more and more defensive measures, but her blade was quickening. She was not tiring at all. Relentlessly, she swung at him harder each time. "Please, give me a chance to explain." "Why should I fucking bother? You don't change, you never will." She swung at his back. "You," she slashed at his leg. "Just," she brought her sword down towards his arm, "keep making the same mistakes." Her last blow connected with his flesh on the side of his ribcage. The red blood she expected to see was instead liquidy, golden, molten, and dripping. His hand touched the wound, and the gold color of his primordial blood covered his hand. He staggered briefly, and then inhaled as his body began healing. Her eyes widened, and she was complicated with a complex combination of fury and awe. "Interesting. I can explain." "Again, you presume I care." Her fury was dampened slightly, but her curiosity of his transformation. But she had been betrayed repeatedly, and her craving for vengeance required satisfaction more so. She stepped back momentarily and tapped her wrists together. Her godly armor appeared upon her body from head to toe. "Oh shit." His panic was palatable. She grinned, pleased. "You've ascended." She glared at him straight on and then charged towards him full force like a bull. Instantly, he tapped his wrists together as well to initiate his own armor, and as she charged, he turned to the side to avoid her colliding directly into him, and instead he curled his body around hers and grabbed her neck with his arm, tightly pulling her body towards his. She thrashed up against the locked hold, raising up her sword. She ignited it with a searing flame. His eyes widened. She flipped the grip of her sword so that it faced the two of them. He froze. She plunged the flaming sword through her own torso and pushed it deeply enough to cut also into his. As she did, she ignited her body. His arm released its grip around her neck, and he slumped over, clutching the new wound. She stepped away from him, and her flaming body resumed her armored, godly form. Her sword had disintegrated from the maneuver. "Ah, that's a new move," he said, clutching the deep wound. "This would take longer to heal." Because she became her elemental form during the strike, she escaped unscathed by her strategy. "Indeed." She paused. Even now, she still felt a twinge of emotion towards him, seeing him wounded, but she remained hurt by his betrayal. She inhaled, lifted her chin up, and her godly form transformed into her dragon form. As a dragon of pure red fire, she soared away into the evening sky. He gazed up, still clutching his wound. This apology is going to be a challenge. He breathed in deeply a few times as the molten gold blood trickled less and less from his wound. He inhaled, looked up towards the sky, and transformed into his own dragon form, a golden dragon, the color of the sunrise, and he as well flew into the evening sky.